Got my hands full now. Okay. Also, very thirsty. Okay. So, and didn't bring a lozenge foolishly. Also, I just, everyone that told me to do this, so I'm going to do it. I'm actually a professional MC, and I host a lot of things, and I do a lot of things with a microphone in my hand. I'm never nervous. I am so nervous today. And pretty sure because most of the time people hand me a script or I'm supposed to just, like BS about whatever's going on, hype the audience, that sort of thing. And to actually be talking about myself and stuff is weird. Even though I do it, I'm a ham. All right, so cool. This might run long, so Regina, please feel free to bring out a hook at any time. Cool. I'm going to just take the lid off this because I'm going to need a little more water now that you're all staring at me. Okay. Huh. Let's just start there, shall we? Good deal. I will also say that my photos are not like in some sort of magical order. Mostly they're here so that you're entertained no matter what happens with me, okay? Cool. So, not all punk is spiked hair and all that kind of stuff they were talking about earlier, right? Like, to me, when I was first approached about punk, I was like, I don't really have punk. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, I'm definitely more grunge. And I was like, well, grunge wouldn't exist without punk. And then I realized that basically there's not really any aspect of my life that doesn't sort of, doesn't originate from this sort of ethos. Right? So it's nonconformity, DIY, anti-corporation, anti-greed, anti-war, anti-racism, anti-sexism, never sell out, right? It's a lifestyle, it's an attitude. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing here. Counterculture, it fosters strong community. Basically, that's going to be kind of the through line of this. Even if it doesn't seem like it, it'll all come together in the end, okay? And it's a place where people can connect, they can create, they support each other. I'm essentially saying that we are here in this room. This is one of those communities of a bunch of punks, right? I'm not calling you names. I think it's good, right? It's a good thing, even if it isn't even 9 o'clock yet. Is it 9 o'clock yet? No, it's not. Okay, cool. All right, here we go. So I sort of took this theme and I ran with it. Now, I am the child of a Brooklyn Jew and a Dallas beauty queen. Right, so of course he was raised Jewish, she was raised Southern Baptist. My father would have called that your toilet training. We all get some in some way, shape, or form, right? Whether you agree with it or not. And sometimes you carry on with that and sometimes you don't. My dad, of course, bar mitzvah, okay? And then he was kind of like, meh, I don't really know about all this. I don't know if I want to conform to this. He was born in 1937, so by the early 50s, he was smoking pot. He was drying it out in his mother's oven in a brownstone in Brooklyn. She's like, what is that smell, right? His father was a milliner, and at first he thought, maybe I'll get into that. And then he was like, meh, I'm not really going to do that either. He started hanging out with a bunch of creatives in Brooklyn and a bunch of artists and a bunch of punks, which I don't think they were called that back then. And this really amazingly beautiful older woman who was basically kind of kept. She was very well taken care of. She took a shine to my father, and then she kept him. Now, I'm not saying that my dad was a gigolo, okay? I'm just saying that he was at the right place at the right time. So when that wore off, he took up being a traveling furniture salesman. He made his way down the East Coast, eventually ending up in New Orleans. And he kind of took up like making molds and doing plaster of Paris. Now, if you're not sure what that is, you can look it up. But like the 60s plaster of Paris. It's like sort of like, it's like the picture that you see when you see the 60s. Anyway, so he became a mold maker and he was doing things like that. And he met this really amazing older woman who lived in the French Quarter, and she took him in. And he lived there with her for a time. And remember, right? Right place, right time. Taking advantage of the gifts he was given, I guess. And so eventually he realizes that he needs to move to Dallas. That way he's closer to the furniture mart. You know, he can kind of sort of use his plaster of Paris knowledge to make some money eventually, right? So let's, his name was Melvin Ira, by the way. I don't think I said that. So we're going to move on to Linda Jane. That's my mother. She was the fourth of six. She was an Air Force brat. She was the black sheep of her family. She's the first one to like bleach her hair and smoke cigarettes in front of her dad. She also, they moved a lot, right? So every time she'd go to a new school, she would tell all the kids that she would meet that she was an alien. I think just so that like she could just be whatever she wanted to be, right? Just like, fuck it. She, against her father's wishes, married an older man when she was 21, and 2 weeks later he died. Not her husband, her father. And so, of course, that was, you know, I think she probably carried that with her forever, right? Like, whoops, I did that and he died. Anyway, so she married him and they, you know, it was the 60s, right? You're doing a lot of drugs, hanging out, having a big time. And he started doing a lot of acid, like so much acid that he like stopped leaving the house. Everything was like, this is a game, that's a game, I'm not going to do it, you know. So my mother took her 1964 and a half baby blue convertible Mustang. Did I say that? 1964 and a half Mustang, baby blue. It was like, right? Okay, you can see it. So she took that and she traded it in for a VW bus so that she could take her husband to a guru in Arizona to try to get him fixed, right? Or something. And about halfway there, the VW bus broke down. She called her sister. Her sister came and picked her up, and her husband, and she was like, you know what, I'm done. And they drove him to his parents' house. She dropped him off, and she was like, sayonara. Enough of that, right? So she gets her own place, and she starts working as the manager at an insurance agency. I can't remember what the next slide is. Oh, I'm not going to go to it yet. Okay, just because, like, it's like, boo, it's a surprise. So my daddy gets to Dallas. He moves into an apartment near DFW, and this apartment complex has like lots of studio apartments and then some like big monster daddy apartments in it, okay? So my dad, of course, living in one of the studios, he makes a new best friend, lives next door, Don Gelino. Gelino works at this insurance agency downtown. And my dad goes to visit every once in a while. He kind of takes a shine to the lady who works at the front desk. For some strange reason, everybody there called her Cuddles. So my dad, hot for cuddles, right? He asked Jelena, is she single? Yeah, she's single. She's recently divorced. So there's this guy. Now, there might be some of you in this room who know who I'm about to talk about. He's a local celebrity, if you will, more than me even. So he lived in this apartment complex where my dad did in one of the big apartments, and his name is Dash Goff. So Dash Goff lived in the same apartment complex as my father. Dash, if you know, he was the manager of the band. The band, if you meet him, he'll tell you. My dad basically always said he was kind of a pain in the ass, but if any of you in this room ever met my dad, you'd probably say the same about him. So, you know, all's fair in this situation. So my dad goes to Dash and he's like, hey, I would like to take this lady to see the show tonight, the band. You got any spare tickets? Dash hooks him up. He's like, hey, by the way, the after party's at my place if you'd like to bring her along. And he's like, cool. So he goes, he hits up Cuddles. Cuddles is in, right? It's the band, okay? And so they go to the show. They go to the after party. Lucky for Mel, he lives there. And so she stays the night, and the rest is history. Cuddles is my mom, okay? It's the early 70s, so there's a lot of unrest. There's Vietnam, right? There's the women's movement. My parents were incredibly politically driven. They protested anything they possibly could, down with the man, all of that. Recently I wish I'd brought that picture, in fact, of my mom protesting the nuclear site somewhere. Yeah, in Damascus, probably like before, like I was born. It was like it was an 80, I think, or 81. Oh, excuse me, it was 79. I was still born, okay? Not stillborn, but I was born, okay? Anyway, they were punks. They protested. They were against the man, okay? So essentially my dad always told me the only reason he ever voted was to vote for women's rights. Yeah. You would meet him and think maybe he's kind of a misogynist pig, but not really, deep down, okay? Anyway, they moved in together. They'd like smoke a lot of pot, get crafty, and because my dad made molds, right? They would make candles. They thought that was super fucking cool, okay? They wanted to move away from the man, move away from the city. I'm sorry about my mouth. I'm trying really hard. I think I'm doing a fairly good job. I hope no one's offended. Okay, great. So they decided to join the Back to the Land movement. And they kind of traveled around to different places around the country, and they finally settled on Arkansas. They finally settled on Stone County, Arkansas. Now these people, these Back to the Landers, they were trying to get off the grid, right? They wanted to be self-sufficient, DIY, punk. Anyway, they bought 40 acres in Stone County for a whopping $6,000. And one day they were at a diner and they overheard these people talking about a new state park that was being built in Stone County called the Ozark Folk Center. Just imagine Silver Dollar City, but with no rides, okay? So it's like, so sorry, I wish there was a way I could just like press a button and that happened. So imagine like there's a blacksmith, there's a basket weaver, a potter, there's an old-timey schoolhouse, all that kind of stuff. And these people are talking about how they need to open a candle shop there. And my dad, being the salesman that he was, went over and was like, oh, candle maker. My wife and I are candle makers professionally, and we would love to help you out. So before you know it, my dad's hired by the Arkansas State Park System to put together the candle shop for the Ozark Folk Center in Stone County, Arkansas, which is Mountain View. If any of you ever go there, that place still exists, and you can dip your own candles and buy some candles. See, there they are at the Folk Center. They changed between the last one and this one, right? But here they are, okay? Anyway, my mom wanted to have a kid. Now, she's the fourth of six girls, right? She wanted to have one child, all right? And so she gets knocked up, and I don't think my dad had ever really considered having a kid, didn't really cross his mind. My mom was like, if we have a child and it's a boy, I'm going to name it Jefferson. That is a family name. And she was like, and if it's a girl, you get to name her. And of course, my dad's like, whatever, sure. So then I'm like born, and the nurses come in and they're like, so what are we going to name the child? And he's like, I don't know. So my mom starts throwing out suggestions. She's like, Jesse? And he's like, that's a boy's name. She's like, Layla? And he's like, we're not naming her after that song. She's like, Sunshine. He said, that is not a name. Hours go by, literally like somewhere around 8 or 9 hours. Finally, the nurse comes in. My dad turns to her and he's like, listen, just name her Sunshine. At least she'll have a good disposition. Here you are. Here I am. So yes, it is actually my real name. Back to the Landers, they left their home, their families. They started over, started anew, right? They had to create their own community, create their own new families. They lived outside the norm. They were the counterculture. They were craftspeople. They were musicians, farmers, small business owners. They would come together often. They loved to party, okay? And my parents' house was one of the main spots for that. Everybody'd bring their banjo, guitar, dulcimer, what have you, their bag of weed, their, home brew, some snacks, and, right? Because, you have to foster community and stuff. They all helped raise each other's kids. They helped build each other's homes. They tilled the land, grew livestock, grew vegetables, and they all shared the wealth amongst themselves. One of the things that my dad did, probably just before I started school, was he realized that some of his friends needed to be able to make a little more money. So he took the land at the top of our 40 acres. It was flat, and he decided he was going to have a Christmas tree farm. So he hired like 4 or 5 friends. They planted all of the trees. They would come back whenever it was time to harvest. He hired this woman named Kathy Hollabaugh who made all of the wreaths. She basically helped raise me. And that was how he helped his community make some money, right? Now remember, my dad's Jewish, okay? He loved to make a little money off of the Christians. And so, of course, it was Broder Tree Farm to the public. But if you were like in the know, it was Mel's Star of David Christmas Tree Farm. Definitely. So I'm born, and that's them at a craft show. I don't know if that's my first craft show, but my first craft show was War Eagle. I was 6 weeks old. You all are probably familiar with at least where War Eagle is. My dad was one of the longest standing members there. He did it for like 43 years. He's a glutton for punishment. That's not my beer, but it looks like it is. So when it was time for me to go to kindergarten, my mom sort of sat me down and had a little talk with me. And she was like, okay, listen, sweetie, they're going to tell you that, they're going to tell you that marijuana is a drug and that it's bad. All right. And I just need you to know that really it's actually just a plant. Okay. And it doesn't hurt anyone. We don't need to talk about it, but you just need to understand that. Okay. She's like, also, while we're at it, you might not want to tell people that we all like run around naked here because they probably wouldn't understand. Now, I know that might make some of you uncomfortable, but I was taught that everybody has a body, they're all the same, they're all different, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. And so I just have never really had a lot of body shame. Which is great, but I also wish that the world that everybody sort of came from that place, because I think that we'd probably be in better shape. Anyway, all right. I was told I could be anything, do anything, that I didn't need a man. They instilled that in me. They maybe should have chilled out on that one just a little bit, because I'm fiercely independent and also incredibly tenderhearted, but whatever, that's fine. Also, sadly, not a lesbian, and if there's any proof that it is not a choice, my mother was really disappointed later in life about that. She's like, I can't understand. How are you so straight? I was kind of an outsider at my tiny little school. There were 300 people, K through 12. I was one of like 20 people in my class. And, kids want to fit in, right? I mean, in kindergarten, I was put on the Tiger Queen pageant, okay? And my parents put me in I wish I brought that picture. They put me in a gunny sack dress, right? And I had a flower garland in my hair, and we show up to this thing, and everyone is in sequins and stuff, right? And I was like, oh my God, something is really wrong with me, And that was when I decided that I needed to try to fit in. So I decided to change my name in the first grade, and I went to my mother and I told her that I was going to change my name. And she, of course, thinking, you're 6, that's great, have fun, you'll get over it in a minute. I was like, yes, I'm going to change it to Sharon. And she was like, okay. Now, the reason I was changing it to Sharon was because I rode the bus to school, and there was this family, the Andersons, that were like the last people to get on the bus. And there were 5 of them, and they were like gazelles. They were like, somewhere between like blonde and almost auburn haired, and they all had freckles, and they were tall and long, and they would like all run to the bus together. And I was like, I'm an only child. I was like, what is this life? This amazing life. They just, right? And so I wanted to be the oldest one, which was Sharon. I never told her. I should probably try to find her. Anyway, so that was in first grade, right? And I went to the teacher and I said, excuse me, Miss Bolin, I've got an announcement I'd like to make to the class. She's like, okay. And I went up and I was like, I'm Sharon from here on out, okay? And I'm not even gonna answer to Sunshine, blah, blah, blah. My parents went along with it in public. And then in the 5th grade, now remember, small town, everybody's related to each other, even the teachers. So in 5th grade, we got this like new teacher from off, and his name was Mr. Smith. And I was like, he's a god. And one day during reading, he brought me up to the front. He was like, come here, Sharon. And I came up and he was like, it's weird. I've got all this paperwork and some of it says Sharon and some of it says Sunshine. He's like, did you change your name to Sunshine at one point? No, that's my stupid real name. And he was like, really? He was like, what a gift, though, to be given something that nobody else has, huh? And I was like, Mr. Smith, can I make an announcement to the class? I decided at a young age I wanted to do weird stuff like this. And so like in first grade, I decided to put on Hansel and Gretel. I cast it. I designed the set. I costumed it. I directed. I, of course, was Gretel. Duh. And like from that moment forward, I told everyone, like my parents, I was like, I will be an actor. Okay. So I did actually get my degree in theater and the acting track at the University of Arkansas. When I was probably about 13, I realized that nobody was going to be able to cut my hair because like back in the day, I missed a couple of really cool things. So here's my house my dad built. People helped him build it. There we are in front of it. Gee whiz. So cute. This is what they dressed me in. Okay. I mean, cool, but like, whoa. You can't see the red cowboy boots, but there were red cowboy boots there. And if you don't believe hippies, there's that flower crown, 2 of them. And you see, they're actually hippies in the tree in the background. That shit is real, okay? And that's kindergarten. I was told that if I brought pictures of myself as a kid, you guys would really like it. And yeah, right? Damn. Okay. This is a group of people who like helped raise me, essentially. Okay, this is one of those parties. Oh God, I forget that he's just basically naked. We had a hot tub and a swimming pool, so that also like helped with like why people wanted to hang out at the party, and. Okay, I'm just gonna go back to that. All right, cool. So anyway, I started cutting my own hair, right? Because I had this crazy, actually, here you can see it. I had this crazy, crazy, crazy hair, okay? And nobody knew how to cut it. Yeah, I told you I was grunge. You can guess which one is me, right? Shit. So I started cutting my own hair. All my girlfriends had straight hair, as you can see. And they were like, well, you could cut ours too. And I was like, okay, cool. And there were tears eventually sometimes, right? But like, luckily, hair grows back. And then I went to college and I got my degree in theater. And I always had beer because all the guys that I knew would like bring me a 6-pack so I could cut their hair. It was great. And I mean, I was also that girl in high school who I was pretty smart. I know, right? And I would say things like, that girl's so dumb, she won't do anything but go to beauty school. So while I was living in Chicago, I realized that I needed to get my act together and do something besides wait tables because I was going to probably poison someone. Meanwhile, I was at the Second City doing their conservatory. I thought I was going to be Tina Fey. It was going to be amazing. But then I realized I needed to maybe get a real job. I thought maybe I'll be a teacher. And then my friend who I moved to Chicago with was an actual beauty school dropout. And he was like, hey, the Aveda Institute opened. You should go check it out. And I went, and luckily it was kind of like the Harvard of beauty schools, you know? And I was like, if I'm going to beauty school, it's got to be like that. I've really got to outdo Amy, okay? And so I did. And then I worked up there for a couple of years, and then I decided I needed to move back to Fayetteville because I needed to get rid of my boyfriend that I'd brought from Fayetteville. And I'm really polite, and so I wanted him to have a place to go when I ditched his ass, and so I brought him back here. He could go back to his family. Also, then I'm closer to my parents, right, who were aging. And I opened my own salon in 2005. I never really wanted to open my own salon. I didn't want to have to own my own business, but somehow it just happened, right, because I'm independent and I didn't want to have to deal with anybody else's stuff. So from there, I did that forever, and I was pretty successful at it, and I still have an amazing community of people. There are a few people in here, I did their hair, I think, right? Anyway, it doesn't matter, because I got the warning, by the way. I did that forever, and I loved it because it did create community, and the way that I look at me getting to do people's hair was, you know, when you feel good about yourself, you go out into the world and you're a nicer, better person, right? So that's how I was creating community and trying to pay it forward. I had a group of friends. We got together and we started this little thing called That's What She Said. And it's an adult storytelling group. It's been going on since 2016, and it's really fun and fab. And I told this really dirty story one time about my Tinder tales, and this comedian overheard it, and he came to me and he was like, hey, we need someone to judge the air sex competition. Now, right, air guitar, no guitar, air sex, no partner, okay? That's what it is. And it was going on at a bar. And I was like, well, that sounds ridiculous, I'll do it. I was afraid no one would do it. I was afraid that it would be kind of gross and weird and stuff, but it was actually kind of like this room where everybody was like cheering each other on. It was kind of cool. Anyway, there were some comedians there, some local comedians, and they were like, you're good at this. Would you come and judge our roast battles? And I was like, sure. So I went to judge roast battles, and while I was doing that, I ended up working with this guy named Brandon Lee. Brandon Lee is the voice of the AMX right now on 104.9 The X. And at that time, he was an afternoon guy, and he was like, I pitched you to be our morning radio show host. And I was like, okay, I thought he was bullshitting me. And then I got a call, and then I got an interview, and then all of a sudden I'm now doing the morning show on The X. So Chad Maupin, who you may know from Big Bot, he did this for me. And I was like, do I look old? Anyway, getting to do the radio was really awesome. It sort of led me to this moment that I'm having here with you. So in 2018, I lost my dad, and in 2020, there was a pandemic, and then I lost my mom, and I walked away from my salon. I was let go from the radio because I was not a shock jock, and I started working at Cheap Thrills, which I still do, and I started giving bourbon tours at Fox Trail Distillery. You may wonder I'm gonna just read this now because I only have a minute. What does this have to do with punk? You're welcome. I believe community and the people you surround yourself with are the most important things in life. My parents taught me to stand up for what's right, even if it doesn't align with the status quo. They were independent and made a good life for themselves, for their community, and for me. I learned to live without regret and to face things head on. Getting to do radio opened so many opportunities for me. I MC Bike Fest, Fashion Week, Northwest Arkansas Pride, Northwest Arkansas Women's Shelter, and other nonprofits. Recently, I was asked to MC the protests here locally. A lot has changed for me in the past 5 years, losing and leaving all of my norms. I decided that money doesn't really matter. The point of life is that the people that you surround yourself with, the community, you get to back people up and they back you up, and it's amazing, and everyone thrives. Being asked to be a part of the resistance in Northwest Arkansas means that I get to carry on the legacy of my radical, trailblazing parents and their punk rock lifestyle. And thank you all so much. I really didn't want to do that. It says there's Q&A. Is that real? Yeah. I mean, if anybody wants to ask me questions, you totally can. Also, if you need to ditch, you can ditch, because I'm like, it's 9:17 in case you didn't know. And my feelings won't be hurt. I promise. Even though I cried, my feelings will not be hurt, okay? I was going to bring a candle up here. Will you just hold that up? It's under your chair, Denise. That's like, that's a Broder candle.